go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Parent Caregiver webinar series brought to you by the District Equity Leadership Team. The intent is to explore issues of educational equity and to create a space for shared learning throughout our Washington Township community. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Dr. Erica Buchanan Rivera, and I am the Director of Equity Inclusion within Washington Township. A couple of weeks ago, we engaged in a conversation about Asian American diversity and resisting stereotypes. And tonight we are going to talk about special education. Every topic that we uplift in this webinar series connects to the lived experiences of our students. Tonight, Washington Township's own Director of Student Services, Dr. Alazar, is going to provide education on several important topics that connect to special education services. So at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Alazar, who will introduce special education and parents' procedural safeguards.
Thank you so much, Dr. EBR. I'm so excited to be with you and with our community. Good afternoon, or actually it's almost evening, right? Good evening, everyone. I am Girmay Alazar. I am the Director of Student Services here at Washington Township. I support special education needs district-wide, as well as 504s, as well as multilingual learners. So I'm very excited to present this very important topic, understanding special education, and you as a parent, you procedural safeguards. So very excited. My ultimate goal here is to provide you with some resources and also some knowledge for you to take away. So we'll get started, and don't worry, we are gonna leave some time at the end to ask questions. So I don't want you to feel like you're just gonna sit there and listen to me for an hour. We will stop and we will take any questions you have, so we can make it very interactive. So my goal with this presentation is, so we'll start with our objectives, is very straightforward. We are going to talk about what is special education. Obviously, that's a big topic, and I'll spend most of the time discussing that. And then at the end, I will talk about parents' procedural safeguard. So our ultimate goal with this webinar is we want to provide each of you at least, at a minimum, one takeaway. One takeaway you can take for yourself. Maybe you can share it with your family member, maybe it's with your colleagues, or maybe with your neighbor, maybe it's with your kid, maybe it's with your teacher or principal, assistant principal, something for you to take away and say, hey, I have an idea. Here is what I learned, and I have a question on this. So something that for you to take away and empower you to move forward. That's the goal. And if you don't take one thing away, I did not do my job today. So hopefully you will take more than one. All right, so let's get started. So the big question that everybody asks, especially if you're not familiar with special education, what is special education? Can somebody explain to me what special education is in general? We know what it is, but I just want to make sure that there is no misconception when it comes to what exactly is special education. The big piece that everybody needs to remember about special education, it is about instruction still. It is about specially designed instruction to meet the unique needs of a child. And the reason that we do that is because we want to give that child access to the general curriculum. That is the big piece of special education that everybody needs to know and practice if you are in this field. Is again, it is an instruction, but it is specially designed instruction to meet that unique child's need. And at the end of the day, it is all about access. We have to give access to that child in the general curriculum. In terms of the law, I have a few items here for you. What does it come from? It is driven by the Individuals with Disability Education Act, called IDEA. And this is a federal law that pretty much said that a child with disability has the right to special education services in a public setting. And if you think about in terms of Indiana, the Indiana special education law is called Article 7. And this is what drives, in terms of the law, for us to be in compliance at our school district and actually nationally. So when it comes to now the services, Then we talk about what does that mean? What does it look like? So on paper, what we call that document is Individualized Education Program, at IEP. Some of you might have heard of IEP over and over again. IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. Key phrase, individualized. So special education is individualized to the unique needs of that child. Every child that receives special education is unique. Again, this does not mean other kids are not unique, but when it comes to special education, because of that child's specific disability, we address it child by child on their specific needs. So every plan that we write is individualized. So we should not see identical educational plan for multiple kids. It needs to be individualized. It needs to be unique to meet that child's needs. And another big phrase that you want to remember is that when it comes to special education, we talk about FAPE, F-A-P-E, which stands Free Appropriate Public Education. So a child has the right to FAPE. You might hear that over and over again at schools or maybe in a meeting. So again, that is a federal law. You can see appropriate is, the one that always makes everybody kind of like go back and forth when it comes to a child's services. And this is just the way the law is written. So what is appropriate for a child in terms of services? I might say this is appropriate, or so-and-so might say this is appropriate, but as a parent, you might say, well, that's not appropriate. I think X, Y, and Z is appropriate. So at the end of the day, though, our discussion becomes to deciding what is appropriate for this child to have access to the general education curriculum. And another one that we want to highlight when it comes to special education is it starts as early as when a child turns 3 years old, all the way until 22. Some of you probably are saying, wow, 22, aren't kids graduating from high school when they're 18? Correct, but we do have some students that actually need transition services to adulthood or to maybe the workforce and so on. They need specialized instruction, or maybe they need specialized plan to get there. So the kids can actually get services all the way until age 22, and that is a federal law. But I'm going to continue the next slide. And now when it comes to special education, we all know not everyone can qualify. According to the federal policy, you have to have one is eligibility to qualify for special education. There are 13 disabilities. There are the eligibility. A child must qualify under one of these eligibility to receive special education services. One thing that I want to highlight that is so crucial, that is so important that for all of us to know as educators, as parents, as you can see, these are eligibilities. So a child will get services for this eligibility. This does not define a child. This does not become a child's identity. We do not want to say that deaf child, that autistic child, or whatever it is, or that child that has specific learning disability, or a kid that has emotional disability. We don't want to make that child's identity, because that is not the purpose here. The purpose of this is that we need to know what does a child need to qualify for special education and what kind of services the child needs. And so these are required to be in place in that child's educational plan. So again, very crucial. We don't stick with this, and this we don't want them to become labeled. I love this picture that I have there for you. It says labels are for cans, not for people. We do not want to take this eligibility and just tell the child over and over again their deficits. Again, this is for eligibility only. We provide services, but we do not want to label kids, because again, labels are for cans, not for people. So we have to qualify under one of this to get special education services. When it comes to special education services, some of you might wonder, I have some national data for you here. A lot of times, maybe you might hear in the news, maybe you might hear it with your family, or maybe you're discussing, out of those 13 disabilities, which one is the most common one when it comes to services? This is a national data. And a lot of people don't know this, but the most common one that students receive services for special education is for specific learning disability. That's the most common one. So about 33% of students in public setting, this is nationally, receive special education services for specific learning disability. And I'll explain what that specific learning disability looks like a little bit later. And the second one is speech or language impairment. And you can see the third one is other health impairment. The most common misconception myself that I hear consistently when I'm discussing with maybe it's a family member that's not really connected into a public school setting or education, or when I am instructing at IEP new students, when I ask them this question, which one do you think is the most common one that students receive services for? A lot of times people don't identify specific learning disability. Guess what they say? I wish we can have a discussion here, but a lot of times people will say, well, it has to be autism, right? Autism seems to be the most common one. I hear about it a lot. You might hear on the news. And the next one that people always say, it's got to be that emotional disability. Well, when you look at it in terms of data numbers, autism, it might be on the news over and over again, but actually it is not. It's the fourth highest. Learning disability, that specific learning disability is the most common one. Emotional disability, again, a lot of people think it's the highest one. Again, it is only 5% of the students nationally receive special education services under emotional disability. So this is a national data, and some of you might be wondering, this is great, but how does this relate locally? For example, at Washington Township. So at Washington Township, we have a little bit over 2,000 students, 2012 students that receive special education services. It's very interesting. Our data, our Washington Township data, actually almost mimics the national data. So you can see, for example, the specific learning disability is the largest one, like the national one, 33%. And you can see at Washington Township, we're 28%, very close. And then speech is 26%, again, very close to the national average. And if you look at the emotional disability, the one that people think is the most common one, we're exactly the same. We're 5%. I know one said full-time, part-time, but they're clumped together with a national. We're 5%. 5% of students that receive special education receive under emotional disability. So these are, I want you to be informed because a lot of times, again, people think we have so many kids that receive autism services, but when you look at it in terms of numbers, actually it is pretty low. We have a lot of kids that receive special education services for specific learning disability. This is just the data that I want to share with you, so you're informed on Washington Township. All right, so let's go to the next one. So now we're going to talk about in terms of how do I start special education services if a child needs special education services. Are there specific standards that I need to follow, or is there a way of approaching if a child needs to be assessed or needs special education services? The key question here, or the key statement that you always want to think about, is if a child needs specialized services, is do you suspect a disability? Is there an area of a disability that you've seen, again, not just one time, but you've seen it consistently? Not just you as a parent, by the way, everyone that knows that child. Are we suspecting a disability? That's the biggest statement that we need to be asking. And from there, then we need to, if you're a parent, if you are saying, yes, I suspect a disability, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, then you need to submit that in writing. I know sometimes you might say it to a teacher, the principal, the assistant principal, verbally, but which is fine, but it needs to be in writing and say, hey, I suspect a disability, and I believe my child might have autism, or maybe my child might have specific learning disability because of X, Y, and Z that I've seen the last few months or years and things like that. So it needs to be in writing. And then we talk about okay, so if we have a suspected disability, what specific tool do we need to use to make sure that we identify that suspected disability? The beautiful thing about that is you don't have to worry about that. You just have to start thinking about it, because we have an amazing team, school psychologists that can support with that. As long as they're informed, they can say, okay, what are you suspecting? We can look into X, Y, and Z, and I'll talk about some of those assessment tools that we use. I just want to give you an idea on, how do you request for an assessment if your child needs it. Once you request for an assessment, there are timelines that as a school district we have to follow per IDEA, which is the federal law, and Article 7 Indiana law. Once you request it in writing, the school district, us, will respond to you within 10 days in writing, either saying, you know what, we also suspect a disability. Yes, we would like to move forward with an assessment. Or we say, you know what, we have not seen, or we don't see a suspected disability, so I don't think it's necessary. Whatever it is, the school district will need to respond to you within 10 days. And then from there, then the clock starts to tick in terms of evaluating the child. So the timeline for the assessment plan is 50 days. So we have 50 days to do whatever assessment that's necessary to identify the suspected disability. Does this child have a specific disability? Do we need to spend time with the occupational therapist assessing, with the speech therapist, with the school psychologist? So we have 50 days to get the team together and do the assessment necessary. So that 50 days, if the child qualifies, obviously we'll talk about a little bit later, we create an educational plan. If there's a refusal, obviously the school district will send you a letter to say, here's why we're refusing, and we're telling you why we're refusing this, because we don't think this assessment is appropriate for this time, or if we feel like the why behind it, and it will explain that. One big piece that we always highlight is if we're refusing not to evaluate a child because we don't think there's a disability, but if the child is struggling, for example, let's say academically or emotionally, we always need to provide the families that what are some of the things that we are going to do? What are the interventions that we're going to do to support that child? Because if you feel like that child needs to be assessed, we're not just going to sit there and let that child struggle. We are going to come up with some intervention plan. And then from there, if you feel like, you know what, I don't think you're approaching this the right way, I think I need to go maybe talk to somebody outside the school. You as a parent have the right to request an independent educational evaluation, and that would be paid by the school district. Usually we don't have to do this a lot because a lot of times we work as a team, and if you suspect something, most likely we do too as a school district, and or somebody does. So usually this is a pretty quick turnaround, but sometimes there are cases that the team feels like, I think maybe we're just jumping too early on this one. Maybe the child has been in school for a year. You know, maybe the child never went to preschool, or maybe didn't go to kindergarten. Now the child is in first grade. And obviously the child is struggling in school. If that's the case, we need to do a lot of intervention for that child, because an assessment might not give us the answer we're looking for. All right, like I said, the team is the crucial piece, and you play a crucial role here. This is all about a multidisciplinary team. This is a team effort when it comes to figuring out how do we support this child. I highlight this for you, and then you can take a picture of it, take notes of it. We always want to focus on this question consistently over and over again as a team. If you feel like a child is struggling at school, academically or behaviorally, the key question here is, what is impeding the child from learning? That is a key question that for us to ask, not once, not twice, 3, 4, 5, maybe more, over and over again. What is impeding this child from learning? We have to consistently ask that question. And if everybody asks that question, then guarantee you we have experts in our fields that we will find the right tools to either assess the child or do some intervention. Same with you as parents. So this, I cannot highlight the importance of this multidisciplinary team, which is, again, you, administrators, general education teachers, school psychologists. I can go on and on and on. And we call that here in Indiana a case conference committee, if that is a team that is going to come together to create a plan for a child. All right, let's keep going to the next one. So if a child qualifies for special education, what will happen then is the child will receive an IEP. Remember, an IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. And this is, again, people ask, what is an IEP? What is an Individualized Education Plan? It's actually very simple. All it is, believe it or not, it is a contract between you as a parent and the school district to provide special education services. It's a document. But in that document, there are some crucial elements to support that child. For example, it will highlight present levels. Where is the child right now? Academically, socially, emotionally, even medically, where is the child right now? And then the key pieces also, goals. We have to have those goals. And those goals are written on an annual basis, but they can be adjusted. It doesn't have to be like every year. And another important piece is least restrictive environment. This is placement. Our ultimate goal is for students that have an IEP to be in a general education setting as much as possible. So this least restrictive environment means is We do not want to restrict their environment. We want them to be with their peers. It doesn't matter if they have an IEP or not. Next one is that accommodations. Big for many kids when it comes to testing, when it comes to homework, when it comes to project, when it comes to classroom settings. That is one that we spend a lot of time on, because with the right accommodation, kids will be successful. If we don't have the right accommodation, a lot of kids will struggle. So the accommodation is a key element of that IEP that we discuss. Again, we discuss modification sometimes, but not many times. And then services. When we talk about services, we're talking about speech services. It could be occupational, it could be physical therapy, and so on. And then another one that is important is frequency. Some kids just need maybe 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, maybe, sometimes maybe like 30 minutes for a month in specific services. So we need to discuss what that frequency looks like. And every child, again, is unique. So now you know why it's individualized. Every child has a specific plan and the frequency changes. And when you get a little bit older, we have to have a transition plan for you. We're not just going to say, you know what, we provide you services, 22, when you're 22, you're done. We have to have plans for students. What are they going to be doing starting in middle school, high school, and beyond? And reporting progress. At the end of the day, the child showing progress, because we can have this beautiful plan, but if there's no progress, then we need to revisit this IEP. And lastly, participation in the state and district assessment. Again, what I just highlighted here is the key components of an IEP. It is about 20-something pages, but these are the key elements that need to be addressed with the case conference committee. Again, that includes you. Some people wonder about special education, how sometimes why is it so complicated? The pages, sometimes my IEP that I receive, if you have a child with IEP, is like 25 pages, 30 pages. And if there's something that I should be good at, or if I should ask the right question, what would it be? And this is it right here. If you want to take a picture of it or highlight it or take a note, is if you can focus on this element, which is specially designed instruction, you would be a mile ahead when it comes to supporting your child, not just at home, but what is going on in the classroom, what the teacher is doing in the classroom, and also what the IEP really states. So the specially designed instruction is exactly what it sounds like. Specially designed instruction for that child. It is very systemic, and it is aligned with that child's needs. It is not because it worked before for so-and-so, so let's try it again on this child. No, it is individualized for that child. Maybe that child needs, small group instruction with pictures, with hands-on activities. That is specialized instruction. And that instruction, again, is all about differentiation. So we're not just doing the same thing over and over again because it worked. We have to differentiate to meet that child's unique learning needs. And another highlight that we like to make with special design instruction is we have to make sure that whatever that special design instruction looks like, we need to make sure that is aligned in the general education settings, in the general curriculum. The last thing we want is to create a special design instruction, very unique, with a lot of hands-on activities, with a lot of visuals, maybe verbals, technology, and then it's very isolated from the classroom setting, from the general education classroom setting. Yeah, that might be great short-term to support that child, but if that's our normal practice, isolating a child or a group of kids and to provide special design instruction, we might be heading the wrong direction. We need to be aiming for, okay, this special design instruction is ultimately going to support the child have access in the general education, in the general curriculum. That is crucial. So if you want to focus on this one, if you want to ask questions over and over again, ask the simple question: what does my child's special design instruction look like? Can you just please explain it to me? What does it look like during math or reading or writing? You as a teacher of record or case manager, what are you doing with this specially designed instruction? Let's just make sure we're all on the same page on this one. You can ask that question. That is very empowering, and then you know what's occurring almost on a daily basis. Again, this is academically, it could be for speech therapy, it could be for occupational therapy, and we can go on. So I would focus on this one. A lot of people ask me, families ask me, I don't want to read this 25 pages. Is there one page that I need to read? I always tell them, read the specially designed instruction. So Of course, I tell them, read the whole IEP, come on. But if you're busy, if you just want to spend a lot of energy and time, spend time and energy on that one, special design instruction. Let's keep going. I want to make sure I'm on time and address any questions we have. So next thing, obviously, when we have all this plan, when we have all the special design instruction, it comes down to progress. The child needs to show progress. It's all about, aiming for a target, and then it's all about the child's success. That's our ultimate goal. But there will be a moment that the child is not going to show progress. Please do not be disappointed at the teacher. Do not be disappointed at your child. It does not mean that the child is not getting it. There's something else is wrong with the child, or maybe there's something is not right. Maybe the placement is not right. All it means is, you know what? That plan that we created, the IEP, again, that individual education plan, that plan we created is not working. Let's adjust that plan is what we need to be discussing. We should not be mad at the child, the teachers, the settings, and so on, because then we're heading in the wrong direction. It's all about the plan. Let's adjust the plan. Because if we're not adjusting the plan, then if we're doing the same thing over and over again. And I go back, again, that caution, let's look at that special design instruction. Can we adjust that? And also sometimes, some people will think, well, I think the reason that my child's not showing progress is because I don't think this is an optimal program. Well, it's almost like saying, like, you're trying to create a perfect program. It's impossible to create a perfect program because what does that mean anyway? How do we know that works? So we should not be aiming for a perfect setting or perfect program. It's all about, again, understanding that child's learning needs and adapting, adjusting on a daily basis if we need to address that child's unique needs. Because you know what? And I can tell you this from experience. I've been doing this for close to over 20 years now, actually. When we look at children, especially children that have unique needs, for me, the way I look at children when they struggle, and maybe when they're not showing success based on the plan that I created, is that some children are just wired differently. They think differently. They understand things differently. So maybe the way we're approaching some of the things that we're doing with them is not working because just the brain is, again, I like to call it, it's wired differently. So because every child learns differently. A child can be great reader and can really struggle with math, or can struggle to read math and can be a great artist, or be horrible at one thing and be a great at music, or you name it, or sports. So because every child is wired differently, and we need to make sure that we highlight that, we tell our kids that just because you're in special education, just because you get into services, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you're just like an interesting person here. We are all different. We just learn differently. We have a unique gift. We have talent. And I'm going to give you some examples here in terms of wired differently here for a second. And then some of you, this might be a surprise, some of you won't be, because I'm sure you heard about it, is that when we focus on the disability, we miss a lot of the talent for kids. So when they're struggling, we don't want to continue to highlight on their disability. I highlight there for you. You can take a picture of it or make a note of it. This would be the common themes for our kids. We need to focus on their ability. Look at these pictures. Imagine each of this person, okay? Imagine when each of these people that you see right now, all the way from Whoopi Goldberg to Will Smith to Walt Disney, when they were kids, that every single person that supported this people focused on their disability. They wouldn't be here. Walt Disney, you all know about Walt Disney, very resilient person, that we would be at a loss. Think about like what Walt Disney has created for the entire world. Think about like, a president, the long-serving president, Frank Roosevelt. If somebody was focused on his disability, he wouldn't be a president, but people focused on their ability and they became successful. Stevie Wonder, John Elton, I can go on and on. Jennifer Aniston, very talented actor, actress, athlete, Michael Phelps. All these people had a disability, but guess what? They had people around them that focus on their ability. So special education, I know we talk about a lot, disability, but we need to shift our mind to that ability because every child has a talent. You don't want to tell Jim Carrey or Jennifer Aniston that you have to create this, you have to read this book, and I need you guys to send me, a 5-page essay summary of it. If they're dyslexic, that is not the best approach. You got to take their talent. As now that verbally they are funny. They can just explain to you in so many different ways, in a funny way, in a serious way. They can do it, but because people give them tools, people believe in their ability. So same for your child and same for us as educators. We have to focus on kids' ability. If we do that, every child's going to show us on what they're good at, and then we can use their strength and support on maybe their weaknesses and just continue to do that. So look at these pictures, and I can add another 10, 15, 20 more pictures of famous people that had disability, but they were resilient. They had the right tools. They had the right educators. They had the right support, and they made it to where they are right now. All right, so the next one that I want to highlight here is, and then we will stop here, this won't take too long, is that you as a parent, what are your parent procedural safeguard? And what is the purpose of procedural safeguard? When you think of procedural safeguard, it's a document that pretty much highlights your parent right under the federal law as well as Article 7 Indiana Special Education Law. And it's a document that I know for sure myself as an educator, not a lot of people read. But in that document, and we will share it with you here at the end, it explains your rights. What are the parents' rights? Such as the written notice. What are the written notice? What is the school required to provide for you? And if you ask for an evaluation, what is the school required to do with that evaluation, or how are they supposed to respond to you? And if you are asking an initial evaluation, which is to start special education services, it highlights what does that look like? What assessment tools are recommended for the child? So that document, I know it's pretty dry. Again, it's your typical, law language, if you want to say it that way, but it's crucial because it explains to you as a parent what your rights are. Can you ask for specific services if you feel like that service is needed for your child to have access, especially to general education? Maybe it's related to transportation. Maybe it needs additional speech therapy. Maybe it's occupational therapy. So maybe it's technology. And that explains to you how that is implemented or what the school district is required to do. Another one that it highlights is that the protection when it comes to discipline. This question always comes up with parents is, well, my child had special needs and he or she is suspended from school now. Aren't they protected under special education? The short answer is yes. But of course, there are sort of code of conduct that if a specific child, violates a specific code of conduct, there will be disciplinary action for that child. In terms of protection, what that document talks about is that protection tells the team that the reason that child got suspended or whatever the consequence, was it related to that child's disability? Did we fail to implement the educational plan that we created for that child? So that's that protection that it has for you. It doesn't mean that, well, you cannot suspend my child cannot get consequences. What it means is if there's a plan, was the plan being followed? Did the child have access to that small group instruction? And that's why the child got frustrated, got in trouble. You know what I mean? So that is that protection that that document explains to you and it gives you. So I just want to highlight that for you. And like I said, we will share that here at the end of the presentation here. And in terms of that written notice examples, I want to provide you, what does that look like? The school district, if you're asking for an evaluation, the school will, if school said, you know what, yes, we are going to move forward in an evaluation, we'll write a written notice to you. If it's a refusal, like I said earlier, we will say, here's the reason why the school is refusing to evaluate the child. So that will be written specifically and then will be mailed to you. And that if the school has to or wants to conduct an initial evaluation because the school feels like the child is struggling, we want to make sure that the child has the right support, we need to get your written consent. So we will send you a written notice to say, does your child qualify for special education? And here is a document for you to sign. Same thing for reevaluation. If the child was evaluated previously, if the team feels like we need to reevaluate, we need to get your permission. That's a written notice that you will get. And then also the big one is if a child is identified is going to get services for special education, for the initial one, this is the first time, we need to get a written notice to you, and then you will get a signature. We will need a signature from you to obviously, implement the IEP. Without a signature, we cannot do anything. Lastly, if we need to make any changes in the IEP, such as placement or maybe services, maybe increase services or decrease services, we will need to notice you, and then we need to do that in writing, and then we need to obviously get a response. So that is kind of an example of the procedural safeguard, what the school should provide for you, so you're aware of what is going on with child's education and services. And lastly, I want to highlight, and again, you can take a picture of this, and whatever you need to do is resources. There are a lot of resources for you. We will share with you some of the commonly used terms. I have a link here in special education. I know in education that we have a lot of jargons, IEP, FBA, bib, and all that stuff we use. And sometimes parents get confused. So there's a commonly used terms in special education that we'll share with you. In that Indiana Article 7, that's the federal law. And we have a link for you that we will share that with you in case, if you want to see some of the language that is used and how that's connected to your child's IEP. And then one I just talked about, highlighted the procedural safeguard, also will share with you. But the biggest one that I want to share with you, take a picture or take these numbers. Obviously, you have my number there, my email address. I'm your resource here at Washington Township. Please feel free to call me, email me if you have any questions related to special education. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to serve kids, and I'm here to serve you. But if you need an additional layer of support, if you feel like, I know Dr. Alzar, he tells me this and that, I need somebody else to, second eye, to just, give me an idea, or maybe be present during a meeting for a case conference, maybe ask the right question for me. Please contact one of this organization, a great organization, and it's free of charge. And the one that I highly recommend, Indiana Indiana Resource Center for Families with Special Needs. Phone number is there, and their website is right there. Contact them free of charge. They will show up for a case conference. They will look at the IEP the school wrote. They can even highlight it for you and say, ask X, Y, and Z question for your next one. Again, like I said, they can be present for you. So there's a lot of resources out there for you to use free. If you feel like, I think the school is saying this and this and this, but I think I need somebody that has done this before, that knows the law, look over the IEP or be present, and we would love to work with them. At the end of the day, like I said earlier, it's all about a team. It's a multidisciplinary team. You know your child best, and obviously we know how to do school and how to provide services. When we work together and you add another layer of experts, your child, guarantee you, will be successful. And I see it every day. So these are the resources for you. Again, take a picture of it if you need them. If you're busy, if you have your phone, email me. I will send you this. And if you obviously need me, I am very responsive. Email or phone number is a great way to get a hold of me. So at this point, I'm going to stop right here, and we are going to go to our questions and answers. And then Andrea is going to share those 3 documents that I said I have. We'll just put them in the chat, and you can, again, download them to your computer. Again, if you don't have them, if you can't download them, please email me. I will send them to you. Thank you so much. And then we'll pause right here because I wanted to leave at least 15-20 minutes to answer any questions you have, because I don't want to sit here and just talk for an hour.
Thank you for taking the time to present this content. I do have a question to start us off, wanting to know the difference between a 504 plan and an IEP. And as a parent, how do I determine which route I need to go for my child between the two?
Excellent question. I think this is probably a very common question too, and it can get a little bit complicated, but I'll make it as simple as I can. So you have great tools to take in case you need to ask about these questions. So when it comes to 504, again, 504 also is federally protected services for a person. Again, 504 again goes, it can be all the way from elementary, and you can have it for a long time. It's not like an IEP that ends when you're 22. So 504, when you think of 504, think of it this way. 504 is about focusing on leveling the playing field. What's an example of that? For example, let's say, I'm going to make kind of like an extreme example. Let's say, I was walking and I fell and broke both of my arms. I just broke them, and I'm a student. And it's the end of the quarter, and I have a final. Due next week or whatever it is. And one of my assignments, as you know, now is to type or maybe to write. So now I cannot use my hand because I broke them. So right there, I need a 504 plan. So why do I need a 504 plan? I need an accommodation. I need the playing field to be level for me. So what I know in my brain, I can share to my teacher, so I'm not going to fail that class. So you cannot tell me, you know what, you broke your arm, good luck. So I need an accommodation such as a computer. So I will need speech to text to respond. So the school can create a 504 plan for me, obviously, until I can get better with my hands. That's just an example of it. So when it comes to IEP, Individualized Education Plan, remember, so that is that specially designed instruction. So that is, it is, by the way, also is level in the playing field, but it is also access. But remember, so that is specially designed instruction. We're focusing on special services that a child needs to show progress toward their goals or to their academic skills. So that's an example that I gave you was 504. Again, 504, you can have it for short term, for a few days, weeks, or maybe 6 months or a year or 2 years. And IEP usually is for a very long time too, but it's very specialized.
Thank you for answering that. Another question that has come up, if I feel like, as a parent, my child has not made any progress regarding their IEP, what can I do as a parent?
Another great question. This is, again, this is common. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to see kids show progress. And so what I would do is, the first thing that I would do is, remember, the first thing we need to do is we need to focus on the child's strength. So let's focus on what is the child doing well. Because a lot of times what happens is we are focusing on the deficit. And what happens, especially if the child is sitting there, you're focusing on the deficit, and that child is just feeling horrible about himself or herself. So we need to focus on the strength and see if we can build from there. But obviously, if they're not showing progress, then what that tells us is the plan that we created is not working. So we need to revisit the plan. And I would, if I were you, if I'm a parent, I would go back to the goals. What goals did we set for my child a year ago or 6 months ago, and then they didn't achieve it? What goals were they? Were they too much, or were they too low, or what went wrong there? So that's why we would look at the goals again. Second is that we need to look at that specially designed instruction. So the question that you would ask, like, tell me a little bit more about the specially designed instruction. Is this happening in the small classroom setting? Is this pull-out services where you pull this child or a few kids and work with them on the specific skill? Or is it the general education teacher that's also supporting my child? What is going on? So you want to understand the why behind it. We don't want to be go into an attack mode and say, you didn't do it, you missed services here and there, and he didn't go to that classroom, and he didn't give him extended time. It's a lose-lose. We need to look at the plan and say, the plan failed, guys. We need to be very, very hard. I always like to say, let's be very hard on the issue, which is the plan, but be easy on the people. Be easy on the child, but be very critical and hard on the plan.
Thank you for answering that. Within the Q&A feature, a parent has asked, who specifically do we submit a written request to for an evaluation? Principal, teacher, who do we submit that request to?
Yeah, So the best and short answer to that is nowadays, because we have emails, I would definitely send to at least 3 or 4 people. Here's why I say that, because some people check their emails quickly. Some people are very responsive. School psychologists might, because they cover 2 schools, they might not be checking that specific school. You know what I mean? So I would include the teacher. I would include one of the administrators, either the principal or assistant principal. For sure, I would include the school psychologist. So ask who the school psychologist is. And if you need to add, another teacher, maybe there's another teacher that I would do that. So critical person, the teacher, the classroom teacher, and at least one of the administrators, assistant principal. And please, a school psychologist would be a huge help, because the school psychologist knows about the timeline and also the process.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. Wanted to talk about ableism, hostility towards individuals who have a disability. How do we combat that within schools in order to ensure that students who do have disabilities are able to function in an affirming environment, an inclusive environment?
Mm-hmm. That's a very powerful question. There's many layers to this, but I think the biggest piece here is it starts with the mindset. It's the mindset of all of us. Mindset for all of us, parents, educators. That's where to start. When I say the mindset, I'm talking about how do we view a child that has a disability? Are we seeing that child as a whole child and on that child's strength, or are we looking at the deficits? So kind of like what I talked about earlier. Are we saying disability consistently, or are we focused on that ability? Right. So that's where it starts. We need to focus on that ability, and also with the mindset that people need to realize. All of us need to realize that we, at one point in our life, we will become disabled. I know that's hard for some of us probably to hear that, but at one point, we will be disabled. There's going to be a point of time in our life that we will not be able to take care of ourselves. We will need somebody to support us or to help us later on in life or in between. Again, I don't want to be too extreme, but when you think about it, in reality, we are a split second away of becoming disabled. We can get into an accident and we can end up in a wheelchair, and now we need services. Now we just became disabled, right? Again, it's up to us. It's the mindset. Do we want to focus on that disability, or do we want to focus on the ability? Remember, so if I get into an accident tomorrow, I'm sitting in a wheelchair. I want people to focus on my abilities, some of the things that I do well or I can do well, instead of like, oh, Dr. Azar is in a wheelchair right now, so you know what? He can't do this anymore. Again, the mindset, this can happen to all of us. So that's where it starts, is, hey, this can happen to me tomorrow. So we need to start there, because that ableism is, again, is that person seeing one person and saying, oh, this person is a little bit less, or this person I don't think this person can handle this. I don't think this person can come to this classroom, and things like that. So we need to start with ourselves, with our mindset, and focus on that ability. It doesn't matter what kind of challenge the child has. It could be an emotional, but we need to focus on ability. Start with that.
And going along those lines, how can parents support their students at home who may be grappling with some of the things you just talked about? I hear these messages in society, or perhaps I have these negative thoughts about myself. I'm not necessarily seeing my ability as a strength, but more of a deficit. How do we help to navigate those conversations at home? Because we know that children can get frustrated, in school, when they are wanting to accomplish a particular task and they are looking at other peers and perhaps comparing themselves. And so how do we begin to grapple with some of those hard conversations with students to make sure that there is a strong sense of self-worth, also?
Yeah, this is a good one, because we need to support a child, meet whatever they are. So every child needs an adult that they can go to. Rita Peterson said this perfectly. Every child needs a champion, one champion at least. So every child needs that. So do whatever you can to make sure that your child has one champion. I know parents are your champion for your kids. That child needs also have a champion at school, one person. Multiple is better, obviously, 2 or 3. So because that champion, that adult, mentor, however you want to call it, is going to be available for that child when that child is struggling. So for example, I used to mentor kids but 6-7 years ago now, and consistently, my message was that when they struggle, when they say, you know, I'm still getting Fs and I'm still failing class, getting Ds in this and that, and so on, so still I can't do that. And they just consistently bring that, and a lot of times that becomes their identity. And so for me, as a champion for them, as a mentor, I always said, it's not you, it's us. We just don't get you. You know what I mean? We don't get you, meaning that we don't understand how your brain works. Again, like I said earlier, your brain is wired differently. So don't worry about it. You are good. You are good at something. A lot of the kids that I mentor with, they were great artists. They were great with hands-on. Some of them actually became one of the best mechanics that I vividly remember some of the faces now. So I focus on their strength. Tell them what they're good at. Give them examples. I used to use a lot Will Smith. I use actors and actresses, athletes. Look at Will Smith. I mean, he's one of the funniest guy. Jim Carrey, he's one of the funniest guy out there, and they're very successful. And people will tell them, like, you can't read. Look at you. Are you dumb? That's not how you say that word. You know, people will tell them that. But guess what? They focus on their strength, which is that verbal communication. You're good at verbal communication. So I would just over and over again highlight their strength. And going back to that, please get them a mentor. Make sure they have a champion at school because they need that safe place, safe adult to go to consistently. If they don't have that, I would spend a lot of time and energy to find that, because I know a lot of kids have that at home. I know we have parents, but they also need that at school.
Great. A couple more questions, and some of the ones I've shared earlier were submitted in advance from families who could not attend this evening. But there is a question that has emerged asking, how often are IEPs typically reviewed?
Yeah, typically is a keyword right there. Typically is every year, annually. It's an annual case conference. That's very typical. I would say, I don't know, from our IEPs, I would say 90% of them, 95% of them, they're reviewed annually. The 5 to 6 to 10%, we've reviewed. I can tell you right now, I've reviewed and also met with families multiple times. I want to make sure that I am clear about review. So when I talk about review, I'm talking about like the team is together, right? This is what I'm talking about. Well, the team is together reviewing the IEP. So we're actually having a case conference meeting. That is, a team is spending some time, because you have to be careful, because in terms of like, if you're looking at it to see the goals, a teacher should do that consistently on their own. Does that make sense? So if you're just doing that, if you're a teacher of record for a few kids, you should consistently be looking at the kid's goal. But as a team, to look at it to see if the child is showing progress, how we doing, to set a next goal, typically it's every year. But if you feel like the child's not showing progress, get the team together, you can meet again. If you have to meet like every 2 months, do it.
Okay. Another question that has come up, and there's actually a couple more. How can we as parents here tonight help support other parents and caregivers of Washington Township children with disabilities so that they can know more about the special education process, services, and resources?
Wow, very good question. You can start with me. I'm going to raise my hand. Start with me. I am very responsive. You can ask admin, you can ask anybody here, email me, and I'm not just saying this to say it. I will meet with you either virtually like this, or you can come to our office. Now we can, with appointments, with mask on, we can invite people to our office. You can come to our office and we can discuss it. But if you have questions specifically at a site-based, I would definitely contact the building administrator, and I highly recommend also invite the school psychologist. The school psychologist at each building is highly trained, and I work closely with them, and they know our special education process and services. They will be able to help parents navigate the whole system. So if you want to do a school-based, make an appointment with the principal and the school psychologist. If you have a big picture, maybe it's a systems, please contact me. You have my email and phone number. I'm willing to spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour virtually or in the office, just listening to you and then providing the service and support necessary.
And just to let those who are participating know, we are recording this, so you will be able to share this as well to other parents and caregivers who are not able to attend this evening. So you will be able to share the process, the procedures that Dr. Alzar has talked about tonight. And there is more question that we do have that I would love for you to answer, Dr. Alzar. Moving forward, how will the district offer equal opportunities for our children with special needs? For instance, outside classroom opportunities such as summer school opportunities, after school clubs. How do we make sure these are open to everyone?
Wow, that's a very powerful question. Access, right? At the end of the day, we need to have access for all kids. I know summer is a big one. I know last year, because of COVID, we were very creative in providing services for students during summer, but I think we need to do more of it. So what needs to occur, obviously, if a child needs summer services, actually, this is part of that IEP plan, extended school year, please mention that to your teacher or to the school psychologist that I believe my child will need extended school year, maybe additional services during summer. So don't hesitate to ask for that. But in terms of extracurricular activity, access after school, I know we all know COVID has definitely put a twist to this, and it's very challenging right now. But I think we all need to sit down and figure out, how do we make this work? What are some of the support and services that our children with unique needs need? Do they need tutoring after school? We have tutoring, we have teachers actually tutoring students right now after school or via Zoom. So if that is something that the child needs, let us know. And if it's sports, if it's music, whatever it is, we can collaborate with you and just find something for you. So start with the school first. And obviously, if you feel like, I don't know, we're not going anywhere, please contact me. And then I will, I have the resources, I will navigate the whole system and I'll let you know.
Thank you for that. And I think that's an excellent question, because within a district that is striving to have a laser-like focus on educational equity, we do want to provide access and opportunity to all students, all meaning all. And so I appreciate all the questions this evening. I thank all the families who were able to participate within this webinar. Please talk to your friends, other caregivers that you are aware of who would need this information. Again, we are recording it, so it will be shared. And we just appreciate your time this evening. To follow more of our work, we do have a couple different social media pages, one on Facebook, another on Twitter, MSDWT Equity, and follow the hashtag WT4Equity for more updates. We do have upcoming webinars, and so we look forward to your participation. Please join us again. But thank you so much for your time this evening. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you everyone for your time. We appreciate each individual person. I know this is late, but thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. EBR.
Thank you. And for those who are asking about recorded link, we will have this posted on our school website, the district website, particularly within the DEI webpage within Washington Township. So thank you again, and we will make sure that you have those links provided. And you can also contact my assistant, Ms. Andrea Badu, who can also send that to you as well. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a lovely evening.